So let's just tackle this issue of it being kind of mediocre, or statistically average.
It's just is this fine?
Yeah.
It's not. It's not.
Well,
an
it's
issue.
interesting
It's just a fine
because I read a lot of reviews that were actually kind of angry. Not a lot of reviews, because I mean it's got pretty well praised across the board. But a few of the reviews were kind of angry because they thought, one, it was a bit formulaic and convenient, and two, a lot of them thought of that as actually not being innocuous, but as being quite manipulative, because they were like, it's so benign that you don't even realize how much you're being manipulated. What do you think about that?
I disagree. I mean, I guess give me examples of it being so benign. I mean, other than just the conceit of a bunch of this family on this road trip, and having to go to this Little Miss Sunshine competition. What part of this is so mediocre to everybody?
I mean, yeah, go ahead, Raymond.
Well, benign. I mean, you're saying these reviews are implying that the movie is not so mediocre as to be pernicious, that it's what are these things saying? I think maybe we missed it there.
I mean, the idea is that it's so convenient and sort of easily digestible, and there's nothing confrontational about it, that the audience doesn't even realize that they're being manipulated along the way.
That's how some movies should be.
I also don't know to what end. To what end are you being manipulated with this film? Yeah. I don't understand that.
I guess
that
just your
critique,
emotions in general, right? It's just kind of like, because it's kind of fluffy and it does kind of wrap itself up in a nice bow, right? With the whole family dance. That is my one eye-rolling part of the movie. Is me and my friend Greg always joke about this, about movies that end in dance sequences, like dance-offs, like that's the big climax, like Silver Lining Playbook, like we were talking earlier, where it's like, wow, and then the characters danced crazy, and whoa, they're letting out their inner selves, and they're just being them. That is kind of like, all right, whatever.
Silver Linings Playbook is such a different thing.
I know.
Because it's like the entire movie, it's pretending to be a serious drama, and then in the last, I don't know, fucking 20 minutes or whatever, they're like, anyway, we're gonna go dance about this.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, I think the dance number is of a whole, like, I think it's really stupid, and the stuff with the family getting up there or whatever to let their freak flags fly, like I said, it's I find it mostly inoffensive and occasionally charming.
I find it charming because
the
kid,
very stupid.
The kid, I think kids can learn something from that movie and that scene, especially. Even though I roll my eyes as a cynical adult.
Austin, I think that you are going to keep prodding me about this, thinking that there's something, but I don't have anything. I don't think this is an interesting movie. I think there's one interesting aspect of it, which is that there seems to be some pretty subtle, condemnation of the Bush administration that's happening sort of in the background.
Yeah.
That they do have, like, the scene where they're sitting in the hotel room and the parents are yelling, and Steve Carell says, like, oh, don't listen to that, and then he puts on TV and it's like George Bush talking about, like, Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld for all of 3 seconds, and then Paul Dano turns it off, and then later on at the pageant itself, they're very clearly kind of poking fun at the notion of over sexualizing children and stuff like this, as you alluded to in your recap of the movie, that Olive is doing something that everyone else in the audience finds so gauche and completely out of line, but you're having a fucking swimsuit competition with 6-year-olds. Right? This entire affair is disgusting. Yeah. And then they have the howdy doody ass MC of the event come up and sing America the Beautiful in all these little girls' faces. And I do think there's some sort of sly satire happening with regards to that, but the rest of the movie's not nearly as pointed.
Okay, so I think that actually it's extremely pointed, because what I would say is that the film sets up, immediately you get a really nice intro to each of the 6 characters, or however many there are, right? You know exactly who they are and what their kind of problem is that they start the film off with. And then you bring them all together and you start to realize, I think, at least in my opinion, what is the ultimate cause of all of their problems is that they're striving to live to some sort of ideal, right? Each one of them is striving for something. And I think that that's ultimately then an indictment on kind of this particular form of what Byung-Chul Han drink, for those of you out there that are playing your drinking game. What Byung-Chul Han talks about as like the entrepreneurial society or the burnout society, or what he calls like the development of the achievement subject. And the dad is literally that. He's wrote a book about winners and losers. He's got his 9-step program and he's all about like, Olive, you got to be a fucking winner. And he even tries to make the kind of like vow of silence that Dwayne is taking, as he tries to incorporate that into his own understanding. But Dwayne is literally trying to break free entirely. That's part of the reason he idolizes Nietzsche, which is such a sort of like teenage dude, disaffected, I can't find my place outlet, right? Like Nietzsche, the great like fuck you kind of type of philosopher, which is a very sort of appealing thing. So many people find philosophy through Nietzsche. Some never get out of it, and some get trapped in there. But it's a very sort of common experience of experiencing life in kind of middle class or suburban America, is to kind of find that kind of figure that's like, I don't want any of that shit, right? So I think that's what kind of like, it's like this pressure that is forcing them all together. And then when you get that dance at the end, the reason the dance for me is so poignant is because it's destroying all of that other stuff that they were trying so hard to hold together. But it doesn't work. And Paul Dano even says, you know, fuck you guys, you are actually all losers. You're bankrupt, you're getting divorced, you're fucking suicide, like fuck all of you weak-willed people, which is the sort of like Nietzschean thing, right? And then he apologizes when Olive comes over and gives
very
him a hug.
Ubermensch.
Right. And then he apologizes, which I think is actually really interesting, because you can have those moments where you're like, fuck you, you guys are all weak, but then you also kind of, he does care about his sister, and he ends up kind of caring, and he comes to this realization that actually maybe it's not about the individual, but it's about the society. And that's when he's at the pier talking with Steve Carell. And he's saying, you know what? Life is just one sequence of fucking beauty pageants after another, right? It's all this fucking superficial, we're just trying to earn some sort of favor by pleasing other people, anticipating that they're going to get some sort of favor. So we fit ourselves into this bullshit system, and we can never live up to it. And so then the dance at the end is like a big old fuck you to the whole beauty pageant matrix that they described. So I think it's so fucking poignant.
I'm curious, and this is not to challenge your thesis. I'm curious, but you were saying they all exist within this paradigm of being extremely goal oriented or whatever. I think that's really clear with Olive and Greg Kinnear, and obviously Paul Dano has structured his entire life and his interactions with folks around this goal of becoming a pilot. How do you feel that the other three, Toni Collette and Steve Carell, and
so Steve Carell, like, what does Carell keep saying about himself? I'm the foremost, I'm the foremost, I'm the foremost, right? He is wearing this badge of honor as being an academic. And as somebody who has spent 12 years in academia, and I understand that need for validation, there's this amazing contradiction that you get where they're in the van between him and the dad, where the dad and him are like going at each other. And it's kind of like you have the prestigious scholar who's like, no, this is the academic way. I'm reading this obscure French author that took 20 years to write one book. By the way, I've got the book right there, Swan's Way. And so it's read the first 50 pages. It'll blow your fucking mind. And then you can just put it down and then say you've read Proust. That's all everybody does. But he's like the foremost Proust scholar. And then you got this other guy who's trying to write a book and make DVD sales, and he's all about commerce. And so there's this, they're both trying to achieve status, reputation, recognition.
Sure.
But yeah, so that's them. Now the grandpa.
But I mean, in like a proactive and productive sense, like,
well,
I think that the grandpa and Toni Collette are all different than the other three. And I think that's not an unfair assessment, right? No,
I think you're right. There's a difference. I think that the cracks of the system, we might say, are revealing themselves in different ways. It takes longer. It takes longer for it to be revealed in Greg Kinnear's case.
But go on.
No, yeah. So that's basically it. The grandpa might be the one who's checked out. He might be the
Well,
one who also.
yeah.
Go ahead, Brian. Yeah.
Because he's to me the key to the whole movie.
He just wants to party.
Yeah, he wants to. But what's interesting to me about the movie when you break it down in the characters, is, they're all at obviously different stages of their lives, right? And also different degrees of how much they have bought into, I guess, what you're calling the system, or as I would just call it, life. Just like in But yeah, like Olive is just idealistic. Oh my God, I can do anything. I'm gonna win the Little Miss Sunshine. Paul Dano is like, oh my God, I'm super driven because but I have my own goals and what I want to do. And I think what other people want from me is bullshit, like my dad. The dad is obviously the most bought into the whole system and literally writing books on it. And then the grandpa is doing heroin, being like, look, I've been through life. Fuck all this shit. Like, none of it matters at the end of the day. And whatever. But to me, I don't know. Like, and I know we've kind of talked about the pursuit of the American dream in lots of movies on this podcast before. So, but forgive me if I'm repeating myself. But like, what I just have a problem with being like, okay, well, this is explicitly a critique of the whole thing, when you could have a whole bunch of characters being like, look, I'm just buying into, I'm doing what I want to do, like a Paul Dano character. Which I guess the only one that to me fits that category is the Greg Kinnear character, because he's so driven by what everybody else wants, what society wants, what other people's expectations. He thinks he's figured it out, written a literal book on it, but he's miserable. Not, he's getting a divorce. Yeah. It's not working for him. And he's kind of, the proof is in the pudding that this doesn't necessarily, work out if these are your only things that you care about. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's a good way of kind of putting it, is that maybe Kinnear is like the he's like the pure representation of the system. Mm-hmm. And because he's kind of got this strong gravitational force in the family dynamic, he exerts that pressure over everybody, or at least he tries to. Right? Like the dad is kind of like, dude, fuck you. And he tries to like undermine it because he's like, bro, he's like, you're striving and it's all for naught. And like he tells Paul Dano, like, just fuck a lot of women and just just fuck this stuff. Like,
have
stop
fun.
Trying, essentially.
Enjoy your life.
Just fucking have fun.
Enjoy the moment.
Yeah, don't try to like toe the party line, so to speak, And then Kinnear tries. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask. Oh, no, go on.
No, just how he exerts that pressure over each of the different family members is interesting. It's different, but I think you kind of see him as like a representation, like a physical embodiment of that thing, trying to exert it over them. And it takes to varying degrees on each of them, right? Each of them has their own way of dealing with it or appropriating it or resisting it.
He is the patriarch.
I was curious, Austin, is there, you touched on a little bit about how Nietzsche serves as almost like an aesthetic fascination for Paul Dano's character, but I'm curious in what way Proust seems like an appropriate thematic choice for a different character to have been fascinated with. What is the, as someone who knows not the first thing about Proust, what do you think this movie takes from that thinker in terms of its framework or its thematic structure?
Maybe the sort of romanticization, at least for Carell's character, of the serious, dedicated, but neurotic artist, right? Somebody who might take themselves too seriously. And I think you get that with Carell. Part of the reason that he's fascinated with Proust, and this happens a lot with researchers who specialize on a person, right? So in continental philosophy, which is the philosophical school where I have spent the majority of my time, it's very common to become like an expert or to align oneself with a thinker, right? Or a particular teeny little subset, right? Like you might specialize in something that's called like phenomenology, and
because you can ascend to the very top of a really stratified field.
I think,
a really like specific field.
Yeah, I think that's partly it, like a huge part of it. And so like a lot of people might specialize, and then you get this in literature studies as well, which continental philosophy and like critical literature and like critical theory studies and like critical English approaches and things like that are oftentimes overlapping in a lot of ways, which is why you get a lot of philosophers from my school that will end up teaching in French departments or in literature departments or in English departments or something, because there's so much crossover. And you do tend to focus on a figure, and I think we idolize them a lot of times, you know, and we're gravitating to those figures that maybe we aspire to be like in a lot of ways. Like I was attracted to Sartre in so many ways because I had this romantic idea in my mind of sitting in Paris, sitting out front of the fucking cafes, and like smoking a fucking cigarette and drinking an espresso and talking philosophy while like fucking ballet artists and abstract artists and performance artists and other philosophers and political theorists would walk by, and you know, like this was like an ideal that I had. So there's something about the life that I think is attractive to Carell's character that is also kind of an outlier, right? Like there's something about that dedication to one fucking book, which then Carell at the end of the book, or at the end of the movie, is kind of like, was it fucking pointless? This guy's life, he spent 20 years miserable, locked in a room where like he didn't even finish this project that he wanted to finish ultimately in the way that he wanted to. So it's like, did he waste his life in it? And maybe Carell is kind of thinking about that too. There's something about that there that's both beautiful in someone's dedication, but also a sort of like kind of like there's something sad about it as well. So I think maybe that's something that's going on there. Yeah. Ryan, any thoughts about Carell's character?
Well, yeah, I in my whole thing, I was.
Hey guys, if you want to hear the rest of the conversation, make sure to find us on your podcast application of choice. And if you want to support Show Me the Meaning or Culture Binge, subscribe and then rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks as always for watching. I'll catch you later.